Well, thanks, Jill. It's good to be with everybody. I'm joining you from beautiful West Michigan where the sun was shining, but now welcome to clouds. I'm a Michigander at heart, been here born and raised, grew up outside of Flint, lived in Detroit, Heartland. Family and I have been here in West Michigan the last 24 plus. So, special place in my heart for Michigan since I travel around the country. But yeah, as Jill mentioned, and kudos to you, Jill. I just wanted to shout out. I do travel all over the country. And I hope you know how blessed you are to have a resource like Michigan Rural Health. I go to a lot of facilities and chapters and associations, and I'm continuously impressed with the amount of resources this group brings. So it's an absolute delight for me to join you today. So, as Jill said, we're going to talk about point of service collections a little bit. My background, as Jill mentioned, has been 23 plus years in revenue cycle. I've been with Smith Magnet and ARS for 13, the last 13. I ran an office for 10 before that. And then I was kind of a process engineer in automotive for 10 years. So I'm dating myself. But my lens of perspective, in addition to travel and the stuff that we possess, I mean, I can look at every keystroke. We record every phone call. We've got a full-time administrative person. We're still human. So I want to put that out there. And I always share that if I'm teaching this class with staff that are actually in the trenches. And that's really important because someone asked me the other day, where should we be at? And I don't know the exact answer to that. When it comes to point of service collections, I can tell you probably the highest performing facilities I've ever been in are in that 40 to 45% of success of collecting the money on a self-pay receivable at time of service. I had a friend of mine who was a mentor of mine many, many years ago. There were times that she hit 60% in ED. And her and I co-presented at an HFMA event one time, and I think half the room thought she was lying. Now, she would be the first to tell you that took a couple of years to get there. And she would also tell you, don't pat us on the back. We sadly had to lay off people because we couldn't make payroll before we got serious about having the community support our facility. And so we did it out of desperation. But so that gives you hopefully a little bit of groundwork of where you are today, which if you don't know, I think that's important that you absolutely figure that out. But then realistically, the highest performing, whether they're nonprofit, for profit that I've been a part of, which is I can't even count across the country, I think a solid number is in that 45-ish percentile. You'd be best practice. Next slide, please. And just a little bit of levity. We can blow through this, but a little bit of fun with you. Someone asked me about healthcare. It's not the customer service feedback we want to give our patients, but we'll index forward. Agenda at a glance today. Hey, why do point of service collections matter? I think we all know that, but we're going to spend a couple minutes on that. Industry perspective, benefit to the organization, benefit to the individual. I'm one of those. I'm a box checker. My wife can attest to that. I want to pay my bill at time of service. I don't want to deal with it later. And I think with a great deal of certainty, I'm a bigger percentage of the population than ever before because we're all drinking the I'm busy Kool-Aid. Oh, you're busy. I'm even busier yet. And so not giving me the opportunity to take care and rectify something at first point of contact actually leaves me with not the most delightful experience. And we're seeing that, we're hearing that. If I pulled my managers on the floor that literally take thousands of phone calls a day, they 100% would tell you that's a number one complaint. So that might be new for some of you, but that's a reality. And then we're going to spend some time on training and practical skills, of course, which you can share with your staff or you yourself can use. I'm assuming many on this call have direct reports, but you are in the trenches once in a while as well. So I hope that we can equip you with some skill sets to support your staff, and then of course help that patient with that experience. And then we've got some conflict resolution stuff at the end as well. So next slide. Can't stress this enough. Excellence is achieved when you engage the entire organization. One of my pet peeves, and it's happened many, many times, it hasn't happened recently, thankfully, is it's really, really tough. When I go back to a facility after we've taught a class, or we've had some interaction, yes, and I say, hey, how's things are going? And one of the staff members says, I tried it, but, the first week or second week, my manager came down and lit me up because they had a complaint because the CFO's dog groomers, neighbors, mailman got asked for a $20 copay and they were offended. Don't do it. You have to have support in the entire organization from top down. I will tell you the most successful facilities that have accomplished the highest rate of liquidation on self-pay our top-down leadership that realize the importance of this, realize it's very uncomfortable for that face-to-face interaction, realizing, hey, dealing with the public, I waited for years. Anyone else, work with the public? It's not easy, and give them support. If you have a gap here, you need to fix it, because I'm going to tell you the worst thing in the world is you could cut someone at the knees when you offer this initiative and your team buys in only to be chopped later. So just word to the wise, please make sure you're getting support from top down. And if a complaint comes, you're going to get them. You're asking thousands of people to do something they don't want to do. That leadership person should, address it. But I would suggest, hey, Darren, we got a complaint. I want to thank you for sticking your hand out, working hard toward this initiative. We knew we were going to get them. I wanted to get your input, but there's a way, right? You're going to deal with that. You're not going to come down and accuse me of being guilty of a complaint before you even heard my side of the story, right? Pretty thin pancake that doesn't have two sides. So make certain you're supporting your staff, or this entire thing will crumble. And that's a bad deal. Next one, please. Asking for money. Click, please. Should index. That's pretty awkward. For a lot of staff, this can be true. There are some statistics out there I read, and I need to find that darn source, but about 14% of your staff, just inherently, their personalities are uncomfortable asking for money. A couple things with that. That doesn't mean that they can't be successful in doing the job that you expect, but they're going to have to build up some of the things that we talk about today a little more than average. My wife is a 14%er. She doesn't like talking about money. She would be an excellent employee, but she wouldn't be great at your front counter. She does all the shopping for her sisters every year, never fails. We're driving home from Christmas. I go, hey, Kim, did Mel and Steph square up with you on the hundreds of dollars they owe us for grandma? Oh, I forgot. She didn't forget. She's a 14%er. She's uncomfortable asking. Now, what's funny is I'll call the sisters and they go, well, why didn't Kim ask us? We had the money in our pocket. Because she's a 14%er. So two things. I want you to think about your staff, who you have on staff today, and see if any of those fit into that bucket. Number two, are you asking these questions during interviewing process? Because if you're not, you need to be. And again, it doesn't prevent you from hiring someone that you think could really fit, but it's really important as leadership that we know who these folks are so that we can give them the extra help, give them the extra training, work with them a little bit more hard in this area, and some of those other skill sets they have can definitely come into play. But typically, this holds true. If I'm in front of a group and I ask this question, it's not uncommon that I have almost 20% of the room raise their hand if they would apply to be a 14, if that's a struggle for them. So give some thought to that. Next one, please. Just a little bit of buy-in, something to share with your staff. This is getting a little dated, but I left it up purposefully. If you could just index through these, Jill, you'll see that, here we're talking about health insurance, workers' earnings, our contributions to those premiums. Look at the gap. Do you see the problem? So when you're talking to staff, I've had people sometimes maybe miss the salesmanship a little bit with staff on why this is so important. And this is one of those third-party exercises where we as consumers, we know we're holding more of the cost, right? I went from a Health Plus, I think back in the day, is that right? I was a GM baby. I never paid a dime. And then I went to a pretty good company in my youth and had some great benefits and coverage and didn't have a lot of out of pocket to, if I would have opted for a plan that we offered a couple of years ago, I had like a $10,000 deductible. Right now, as a household, I'm sitting on 6, 3 on me and 3 on my wife and daughters. And so it's a hefty expense, right? And so just some things that you could share with staff that help, again, get them thinking and generating buy-in, because I think that's important and sometimes an overlooked issue. Next one, please. Future of healthcare, again, a little levity. This is my neighbors. I live in West Michigan. We've got the $1 billion mile, they called it for a long time. Now we're Beer City in Grand Rapids, but you go downtown Grand Rapids and there's a brand new crane going up and it was someone building, right? Here I am in Holland, Zeeland area, and which brand new facility do I go to? Do I go to Holland? And I realize that might be unique and some people aren't battling that, but you've got competition and consumers, and my neighbors, anyone else get accosted at the mailbox because people know what you do and they want to ask you about bills. I mean, it happens to me often, and it's a challenge, right? And so some of the things we need to overcome. But again, we need your staff to be comfortable in having that conversation, and we're going to talk about how to do that a little bit. So next one, please. Well, why do we have to ask? Well, we covered some of those things. But when I'm in front of a group, right, we don't have time. I wasn't hired for this. And I'm not comfortable are probably the top three. But as you're initiating this or you're looking to improve your process because maybe you poked it with a stick before, but now, hey, we really got to take a hard look at this. Spend some time with that staff. I think some of this information, some of the outside information would help them generate buy-in. And I think that, again, is really important because if I understand the mission, then I hopefully am going to buy in a little bit more. If you just tell me to do it and it wasn't part of my interview, it wasn't part of my job description, that's a little harder sometimes to grasp and to adopt. Another item that could have index, please, that you have is your actual bad debt. I was out of the health system, and typically I always ask this to share. It's not something that's normally shared, but on the hospital side, you certainly could do it on clinic. As magnitude of the missed opportunity in the previous calendar year. I will throw this out to staff. And again, when I'm standing up in front of a crowd, this is really, really enlightening. Because I'll say, hey, what was your bad debt? And a lot of times it's blank stare. And they go, oh, no idea. And I'm like, well, wager a guess. And I got candy I can throw at them and create some incentive. But they need to know this. And if you would index through these, Jill, just real quick, it'll show you. But the total amount of bad debt on either annual basis was a hospital with a integrated clinic. They, 8.4 million, about 7 a month, 176 a week, 25,000 a day. And the hour that I spent with that staff, we have $1,000 of goods and services going out the door that may never get collected. Certainly going to get written off to bad debt. Their national statistics, you're going to get 13, 14%. You're going to pay X% commission. So your net is going to be a single digit. This always gets people thinking. And so if you're comfortable sharing this information, again, I think it's just important to talk about the magnitude of the opportunity and then flip that. And so next slide, please. And you say, hey, listen, we're open 365 days. Click, please. If the average copay is $25, keep clicking through if you would. You're looking at, maybe 250 patients. Again, do this for your benefit. What does that amount to? Well, in this particular case, you got $2.3 million of cash opportunity. Now, the key is you're not going to collect it all. Remember, best practice, you're going to be somewhere in that 40 percentile. If you're starting from zero today, it may take you 6 months, to get up to that number if you really, really got after it. But this is all relative to your facility. It's a ton of money, bottom line. And so there's a big opportunity. But balancing realistic expectations that the staff, hey, I got to hit. No, absolutely not. We already shared that. You're looking to see if you can impact about 40%, 35 to 45% of this over time. And some of those, if again, you're starting from zero, not only do you have a cultural shift within the organization about this, you then have to have that cultural shift with the community, especially if your hospital has never done it. My area, even if one hospital didn't, others did. When I'm in a metropolitan area, there's usually a for-profit in there somewhere that's been very aggressive for years doing this. So just, again, think about where you're at in your community, what your competition may have done. I will tell you, not to be too facetious, but the rest of your businesses in town do this every day quite well. Matter of fact, I was in line at Meijer the other day. My wife and I got laughing about something. We've got 4 daughters, 2 grandkids. There's always something to laugh about, or you cry. We didn't realize it, but we wouldn't pay her. The guy was done, and he was looking at us like, "Hey, idiot! There's 5 people behind you. Stick your card in and move on." And we just cracked up laughing even harder because he didn't even say anything. Right? It was expectancy. Why are we any different in healthcare? We're not real good at it, and we need to be. So. Index slide, please. So Suzanne Wolfskill, I had a chance to meet her years ago. Incredibly sharp lady. Fundamentally, the patient access, right? Performance drives everything else. And if we get this right, then the rest of the revenue cycle flows pretty easily. I couldn't agree more. So foundational, some of the things that we're going to talk about. What are they? Next slide, please. A team effort. We touched on this a little bit. Front end staff, critical. Physicians. Let's talk about them briefly. I was at a system a while back. And I said, what's preventing you from being successful when I was rounding the day before, working with staff? This, we do it right. We think we do a pretty good job, but then the patient goes in the exam room and they complain, and the doctor says, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." Oh, dear Lord. No, we got to stop that. I was at a system one time where the FTEs that were in the trenches trying to accomplish this said the ED staff, the nurses just allow the patient to leave and they can exit a side door. Don't do that. Unfortunately, the fire marshal wouldn't let us lock that door when they really just started to get after this program at that facility. But we thankfully were able to ask the providers to say, do us a favor. Instead of letting them out and go through the double doors, walk them 30 some paces and introduce them to your colleague. Hi, this is Michelle. She's one of the lead cashiers on first shift, and this is second, and this is third. And tell them, hey, thanks for, choosing us. And let me introduce you to the individual that can handle those questions. Just those nurses and that staff walking those patients past that side exit door, which everybody knew they could bolt out previously, jumped their cash collections thousands of dollars. So something so simple as that. But physicians, PAs, providers, you absolutely have a hand in this. Coders, insurance companies, and then obviously the patient too. So next slide, please. A couple of things I want you to think about. You need answers to these questions. Are patients satisfied with our process today? Yes or no? And again, you're not going to satisfy everyone. I think here you need to be selfish, which is not a word we use often. But, is our process in place? Overall, are we providing opportunities for patients to self-cure? You may hear me say that a number of times because I'm that guy and a ton of people are. If anything good happened out of COVID, we have watched not only the adoption rate of self-cure go through the roof, but patients demanding more and more the ability. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to talk to me. So give me the opportunity to take care of my balances. But are they happy? Yes or no? And you just need to be really candid with that and really drill down. Do we possess the tools for change? I was with a group the other day. They don't have a QR code on their statement. They did not have a cashier on third shift. They didn't have this. They did real well in a few things. But as you walk through that process, I want you to think about, as a consumer, from the time I get hopefully my pre-reg call to the time I exit that facility, what's missing? Are there any gaps? I took an 80-year-old friend to a dermatology appointment. And I tell this story because it still makes me laugh. I'll laugh. I'll enjoy it. It was so good. I'll share it. And I'm sitting there and they're like, hey, how long have you had that spot in your face? That's why I guess I didn't really think that was a spot. Next thing you know, I'm in the chair getting this thing lasered off. And I said, geez, Herb, good thing I didn't take you to your colonoscopy. But I left that meeting. I got a text on my cell phone. A day or two later, I got another text saying I could pay my $250 bill with a click of a couple buttons, put my credit card in, I'm done. Wonderful experience. Do you have that technology? Because Amazon gives it to me. Every other place I spend money with does. You need to think about, as a consumer, where are you lacking in some of these processes? What can be altered, right? We're talking about some of that today. What training does the staff require to be successful? Maybe something like this would be helpful. Have you invested in them at all? Or have you invested in them lately? I mean, they're one of your number one assets. I think you should. And then what does success look like in the future? 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, with the number of people participating in this one. That's a real hard one for me to say, but I would just encourage you to look at where you are today. And then what does continuous growth look like up into that 35 to 45%? I think you absolutely could have a high five pizza luncheon if you got into that realm. If you exceed that, man, I want you to let me know. I want to hear what you're doing so I can share it with others. But again, realistic expectations. And if you haven't even started this, you absolutely could be hitting those numbers, this calendar year. But it'll take a little bit of work and an input from your staff to do that. Next slide. Hustle up a little bit. Hey, engage the patient. When combined, the financial and clinical engaged patient is likely to understand the responsibilities, not be surprised, right? And then meet your financial obligation. That's really, really important. We talk about the pre-setup for the care and the provider piece, but we're not having a good enough conversation relative to the financial responsibility. Thank goodness when I had my knee meniscus tear, they called me and said, hey, it looks like your out-of-pocket could be about $400. We ask that you be prepared to pay that at check-in. Had they not called me, I don't carry my HSA card, I would have been a fight or flight situation. But they were very good. They called me, they prepped me, and I was able to meet the expectation. So again, an opportunity. Next slide, please. Lasting impressions and first are lasting. Wait a minute, that's us. Again, I spend a lot of time when I'm talking to your frontline staff because they have to know how important this is. We're also, we're often the first and last touch point of the experience. That means we significantly shape the patient's view of our facility. How many have gone to a restaurant where the food was, but you had an incredible server? And oh, by the way, you waited for your food, you waited to sit down, but your server was an absolute riot. I promise you, you got out in the car and said, what a great experience. Your frontline staff has that power, that ability. They also put you at risk. And sadly, the statistics show if you did it great, I might tell 4. But if I had a bad experience, and I'm jumping up and on there on Yelp, and I'm going to be a social media hero, and I'm going to hammer you. And unfortunately, I see that too often. Actually, I was chatting with a company that actually focuses nothing on but this and what your social media presence is and making sure you're getting a good message out there. But just again, something to be thinking about. Next one, please. Why invest in that pre-register time? We're going to blow through some of these. I'm going to catch up a little bit on time. In the green there, it's the perfect time to ask for those copays and coinsurance prior to the appointment to set that expectation. For you on the clinical side and even on the hospital, I was chatting with a hospital recently whose average balance is under $300. It's the only cost-effective way to collect those small balances and copays and deductibles net patient portion. The last thing you want to do is be sending out 3 statements, an ECA notification, and then I never respond and off I'll go to bad debt. I mean, let's face it. I mean, under $100 balance, God forbid, under 50, under 25. I mean, national averages, right? Your margins in healthcare are single digit, low single digit. So at best, you might have had a buck or two to put in your pocket to go toward a new roof or a new facility or some new staff. You send out a statement, you're done. And so it's really important that we capture that low-lying fruit when you're there. And oh, by the way, I prefer you do. And I'm a larger and larger portion of that population. So help me prepare to meet that. One of the top complaints of staff, I don't have time. I'll tell you, I was with a group out west the other day. I have so much respect for this group of people that are doing this. I mean, they were asking questions I never even heard before. A black coal lung or something? Do we do that in Michigan? The registration and the amount of information they were trying to grab and the skill at which they did it, I thought was amazing. But yes, they are going to be busy. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this and that. When I teach in front of a class and this is really a hot button, I'll give you a pass. I'll give your employees a pass to say, yes, there are times when this is absolutely true, but I'm not going to give you this pass 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So how do we build in margin to have some strategy to have the conversation about self-pay receivables? And we'll get into a little bit. And we got a slide on how we're going to do that. Quality input information. When I sit, again, if I was to just say, hey, I'd like to come into your office and I just want to sit with your front desk, or I want to sit with your cashiers. These are all things that my ear is listening to. Any change in your last address? Well, number one, it's a closed-ended question. That's wrong. What I should be saying is to ensure our information is correct and you accurately can bill your insurance, which, by the way, is a courtesy to me, right? Is anyone contractually bound to do that for me as a patient? There's a tip for you. You can use that later in posturing. We need to confirm a few pieces of information with a smile on your face. Okay, so I've got lots of scripting in here. I'm going to give, Jill has it. I've got another book at the end I'll share with you too. Best phone number to reach you at. Don't read me the demographic information. I hear that too often. I don't care. I'm not feeling well. I'm busy, right? Life has come at me and I don't want to be there. And so I'm kind of checked out mentally and I go, yep, no. I just want to blow through this process and get into the room to see the doctor as fast as possible. I see it on their face. I witness it every day. I do it. And so there's a skill set here that really needs to be followed. And so if you haven't sat out at that front desk for a while, I encourage you to do so with some of the scripting and some of the things we've got here for you. Next one, Jill. Wrong information, employer, dig, don't assume anything. Again, don't regurgitate what you see on the screen. Make me as a patient verbalize that with you. And then if I get upset, have a neutralize and conquer item there too, where your staff is capable of handling that. I had a gal work for me years ago, had 3 different priority plans in 9 months. She had it at a previous. She came and worked for me, had it, and then her husband got a different job, and his was better than mine, and she switched again. If you said, "Hey, Vicky, are you still with Priority Health?" You bet. Congratulations. Wrong answer, wrong question, closed ended, and you made a poor assumption. Now you got a claim that's not going to go through. So don't do that. So just again, be thinking and listening to some of those things. Next one, please. This hopefully gets a smile. To be honest with you, this one's gone boy. Some laugh, some don't. Next one, please. Is the customer always right? Show of hands. If I was up in front of you, we used to teach this right back in the 80s. At least we did. Yes, no. And usually it's about 50-50. I would dare say there's a third option. If you could click through, please. And I think Medina would agree with me. No, they're not. We work in a very complex, complicated world. And so again, back to that support, back to understanding a complaint, back to understanding why a patient might be upset. Your staff may have done everything right. And 9 out of 10 times, hopefully they are. I was just on the phone with a group this morning where someone was really getting vocal on Facebook. And we're working through that from a customer service perspective to get our arms around. And it was specific to their statements, which I looked at them and actually I had a couple consultants look at them. They're outstanding. They're presenting a tremendous amount of information. I dare say it would align with HFMA best practice. And they look really good. And so I'm not a fan of making policy for the exception. And so we were trying to get our arms around that. But from just a cursory review, the patients really didn't have a lot of merit to what they were confused about. And so again, drilling down, working with your team, understanding what that pulse out there on that front line is, make sure you get to it. Make sure you get to the factual information because your staff needs your support. Next one, please. Definitions, customer service. If you could just pop through these, please. We're going to try to catch up. Apathy, right? We don't want that. We want to make sure we focused a couple more times, please. Sympathy, again, comes across as condescending. What we really are trying to get after is empathy, right? We want, put through there. There it is. The ability to understand and share those feelings. That team has to be right. Their tone and voice inflection, which is coming up, we're going to talk about. That's where they really need to be. This gal here I thought was comical. She was searching for hers after, a few shifts in a row. I'm really listening for this too when I'm sitting with staff, right? We wear our heart on our sleeve in healthcare, but it's really important. Apathy and sympathy are absent, and it's the empathy of trying to build that rapport with that patient that has to come across. Next slide, please. Couple things here. I'm going to just, attitude goes without saying, interest, action. 90% of customers consider taking ownership as the primary factor in the wow customer experience. Can't stress it enough. I was traveling a while back and the rental car place was an absolute disaster. And I thought, I had a 4.5-hour drive to get to my destination. I'm thinking, this isn't looking good. And I got up to the counter and this young gal said, Mr. Cook, I got you. And I'm going to tell you, it was music to my ears. She did exactly what she was trained, and thankfully she had a car for me because I did have a reservation, but it completely put me at ease. I mean, I could just tell she knew what she was doing. Mr. Cook, I got you, with kind of this like sheepish smile on her face that I know you're watching this what show go on in this lobby right now and people are upset, but I'm going to take care of you. Is your team exuding that with the patient, good or bad? Do they have the skill to put me at ease or neutralize me? Because she probably saw my face going, dear Lord, am I going to be like them? Are you going to disappoint me as bad as them? Was probably the look on my face because I've traveled too long. And to hear her say that, I got you, was awesome. Verbal language, body language, tone and voice, single most neglected, yet one of the most powerful skill sets. Tone of voice contributes to our ability to persuade, influence, emphasize, and engage. Our team, I remind them, hides behind a phone for almost all of those million interactions. Total different skill set when you're face to face. Again, tremendous respect for your team that does this and can do this well. Really, really complicated sometimes. And we as consumers don't make it easy for them. I used to use an Archie Bunker reference, but that's showing my age, so I can't do that anymore. Next slide, please. So word choice, tone, body language. Next one, Jill, if you would. Couple things. You could print this. Again, just things that I'm listening for when I'm rounding with your staff. Obviously, you want to stay away from the left. You want the stuff on the right. I actually had a group that had some fun with this. There was two young ladies that were awesome. They were just an absolute joy to work with when, again, I was rounding before I taught some classes for a health system. And they came up with an idea to put this on their desk, and they would stroke count. They would listen to each other. That's really important because sometimes that's a blind spot for us, right? We don't always hear what we're saying. When I present, I know I walk. I know a little bit of a Polish descent. But when I present in front of people, maybe I look more Italian with my hands. I love it when a colleague's with me or someone in the room that I know and can trust and say, hey, what did I do wrong? What did I do right? When I'm focused on content, I really can't sometimes focus on my presentation. And I'm not a professional public speaker, and hopefully I haven't revealed that too quickly. But we all need, right, that coworker and that colleague to help us elevate our game. These two young ladies had fun with this, and whoever had better over here and less over here, and then somehow they created a scoring, that one had to buy coffee. So something that simple, they made a game out of to elevate their game. And they were already good. And I can't wait to see them again in a few months to see if they're still doing this. But that's just an idea for you how you might be able to incorporate something like this with your staff. Because again, we all need constructive feedback. Some take it better than others. But if you can make a little light out of it, I think this one was kind of fun with that staff and what they did. Next one, please. So tone of voice, in-person, phone, through email, right? In email, we don't cap everything, an exclamation point, you're yelling at me, right? Everyone knows that. Next one, please. Nonverbal, can't stress this was enough. Again, we hide behind a phone, but 55% of your body is your communication, only 7% in words, and the rest is that 38. So when my team is on the phone, they're only talking about 45% of their communication is actually hitting the consumer. So when that's the case, you really, really got to make sure you're hitting that and you're on your A game. I will share with you, same thing with your staff. But even more importantly, those that you've got at your front end and you've got at your back end, right? Because those are first and last impressions. If you've got an employee at the front or the rear, especially the rear end, where that's my last touch point, and they look like they were weaned on a pickle, you're in trouble because you could have done everything right. Everything. The rest of the entire organization could have hit it out of the ballpark. But you got an employee that's having a bad day that day, you're in trouble. If I was in front of you, I could cross my arms, which are defensive. 4 girls, my forehead's growing. I blame them for my hair loss, but they're all good kids. I could say like this, Jill, I can't tell you how happy I am to be here today. What a joy it is to share with Michigan Rural Health. Okay. You didn't hear a word I said because my nonverbal is screaming at you. I want you to think about who you have on your team that may struggle with that. We have a rule in our office because, again, the 7 and 38 are critical. When someone's losing their edge, they take their headset off, they go get a breather. We never put our reputation at risk or, God forbid, our clients. Sometimes, Friday the 13th or full moon on a Friday, I never believed in that until I worked in healthcare. We've got to take some of those hits. We got to go dust ourselves off. We got to get back on that phone because the very next patient deserves our A game. Are you giving the A game to everyone that walks through your door? Something to look at. Next one, please. This is some more nonverbal. Step through, please. Can't see these. Step through one more. So again, I want you to internalize the one on the left, the cat, can you hear me now? Actually had a health system ask if they could print this. They made it a traveling picture. And again, there was 20 some, 30 some people. It was a fairly large system and they had some fun with this. And again, if I'm on a phone and my colleagues on my left didn't hear it, that conversation went great, they could pass that thing to me. And whoever had it on their desk at the end of the day had to put like a quarter or 50 cents or something in a jar. And when they got enough money, they made donuts. They bought donuts. Didn't make them. They bought donuts. This is just something fun they did to help keep each other in check. I will tell you, it was a process in our office when we bought software that could look at every keystroke. We recorded every conversation. It's easy to cherry pick people when hindsight's 2020, right? But when you're in the heat of the moment and you got all this stuff going on and that person is in front of you, That's a completely different skill set. And we realized that. And we had to make ourselves a little bit vulnerable and transparent to go, wow, I blew that one. But you know what? The next time that patient comes in, I'm going to be better equipped. What can I teach? And, and we'll talk about some of that stuff. And then how about you? You walking down the hall because you got your voicemail before you started work and there were 3 call-ins. Are you guilty? And I'm the first patient that came through the door. Just saying, be careful with it. Next one, please. Jack, yeah, last one, we'll blow through that. His nonverbal, he had a rough night. Let's talk about money. Again, back to this 14%. I always find it fascinating in the news or someone will take out of context healthcare. Is it expensive? Absolutely. It's not cheap. We all know that. But in the grand scale of things, I share this with your staff because you're not always to blame, right? I found it amazing when I sat with a financial counselor for many hours at a safety net hospital out of state, and everyone had a brand new iPhone. Everyone was dressed to the nines. And the gal that I was working with said, "You think that's bad? When I go to lunch, every single person I talk to is driving a nicer car than me. Sometimes my job is really tough." And those are realities. And so I just think it kind of goes to the psyche of our staff to say, hey, listen, healthcare is very important. It's not cheap. I don't ever want to hire a cheap doctor. But in the grand scale of things, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. There's discretionary income out there that they're going to either choose to use on a cell phone or whatnot. We work hard. There's nothing more important than our health, and we deserve to get paid. And those are my assumptions. And that's what I want your staff to understand. Because when I walk around your town, if I ever came and did an in-service like this, or when I was out west the other day, I was there for 2 days. I talked to every single touch point I had, from people at the restaurant to the gas station to the hotel. And shocking, everywhere I went, I had to pay my bill. So just again, think about how you might be able to use this to benefit your staff and their understanding of that what we're doing here is absolutely necessary and important in their job. So next one, please. Core steps. So let's get into some of it. This works with you're on the phone or face to face. Identify the patient by name, yourself. Thank them for choosing your facility. Are you doing it? Tremendous competition in Michigan. I don't care where you're at. You say, well, I'm a critical access. We don't have another hospital for, 35, 50 miles. You got a Walmart? Do you have an Amazon? But you do. Guess what they're doing in healthcare? So the objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. Yep. I was at a health system the other day. They're the only one-trick pony in town. Oh, no, they're not. Right next to my hotel was a national walk-in clinic company. And guess what? Their parking lot was full. Any risk of those coming to your rural area? My guess is a yes. So you do have competition, whether you do or not. Thank me for coming, right? Take care of those registration details. Again, tremendous skill set. Present me with that financial responsibility. Ask for payment in full, right? And then deliver that. And then the psychological pause, because silence is power. Don't be the first to speak. When I'm sitting with staff, this is usually very uncomfortable for them. But let's put all this together. Next slide, please. So what does it look like? If you take anything away today, I'd ask you to print this slide, put your staff member's name in it or your own, and practice this. I'm Mr. Smith. My name's Darren. Thank you for entrusting us with your care today. Your balance due is $150. For your convenience, we accept cash, check, or credit card. Which will you be using today with a smile on my face? You acknowledged me by name. You introduced yourself. So you built rapport. You thanked them for choosing you. You stated the expectation. And the key is you gave me or him choices or her, all of which support your objective. If I was a hothead and you said your balance due is 150, and I'm that guy that goes, oh, healthcare is so expensive, and I'm that guy in the early slide with the ATM ID in my brain, I could escalate on you. But if you finish the sentence, for your convenience, you put me into a multiple choice decision process. I can't process that and emotion at the same time. There's some psyche here. It's very important that you finish the sentence. And asking for payment is normal and expected by me, the patient. I paid everybody else this week. I pay everybody else online. No one ever is sheepish asking me to pay for goods and services. Why would I assume you are? Have the conversation. Next slide, please. So what's next? Core step. What happens then? If I say, well, gosh, I don't have it. Determine the problem or stall, right? Find that solution, close the deal, and evaluate yourself. What did I learn about the engagement? What can I share with others? What didn't go so well that I might need help with in the future? Seek that knowledge and skill to prevent negative interaction. We teach all the time. There's two people talking. One is in control. It needs to be you. So we're trying to constantly get our staff to have that confidence level, equip them with the capacity to handle any stolen objective that they may have, and be able to go forward and have that dialogue. Really, really important. Next one, please. Feel felt found. Just a little quick tool for you and the staff can use. Hey, Mr. Cook, I understand how you feel. Empathy has to be there. If it's not, this whole thing crumbles. Other folks have felt the same way. Hey, working together, here's what I found. That action item, right? So immediately, hey, Mr. Cook, hey, I don't have it right now. No worries, Mr. Cook. I understand. Here are my options. And I can steer that, right? So they have to have something like this in their tool set. Next one, please. Speed up a little bit. Here's where we're going to build in margin. That pie chart that was just up there, I want you to think about for you. Now, this is a hospital and clinic combined. What we're showing here is your range of buckets. So when staff says, I don't have time, I'll grant you that. So now I need you to be strategic. Here's what your portfolio looks like that comes to self-pay. In range 1, 2, and 3, you've got over, 70 some percent of your accounts, but it only represents 14% of your cash. Your biggest bucket of cash is in your range 6, which is 27.9. So if I have a patient and I'm staffed, someone called in sick, whatever the case may be, am I going to die on the battlefield of range 1? No, that doesn't move the needle. That's not how I get paid. I will still posture that person and say, thank you, Mr. Coming. Just so you know, your copay and deductible is required at time of service. Your actual carrier also, recommends and suggests or even demands that, the right and wrong choice of words, expects you to pay that at time of service. So, and we can help you with that. So next time you come in, and I'm gonna let you go. When the next person in line, or if I catch up because 1, 2, and 3 were all range bucket 1, 2, or 3 or lower, I'm not going to generate tons of value there. But if the fourth person in line and I only have one more back in reserve, I may choose in range 6 to have a much more granular conversation because, boy, that's where 27%, that's where the money's at. And so trying to teach staff how to build in margin and to catch up when they're packed. Okay, next one, please. Here's just some more scripting that I'll give you. And then I've actually got a document that I'll share too. Next one, if you would, Jill. I can't afford that amount right now. One of the number one issues I hear is, okay. Could you pay something or could you pay $20? Never fails. Most of the staff jump to the lowest possible amount. Don't do that. The answer is, thank you for sharing that, Mr. Cook. I know times are a little bit difficult right now. How short are you? You could have asked me for $500. I only have 400 in my wallet right now. I already told you I got 4 girls. I don't have 400 in my wallet. I haven't seen a $100 bill in 20 years. But bear with me, right? I was monitoring one day and my staff had I think it was almost $5,000 bill. And I thought, oof, who's got $5,000? And my staff, thank God, were disciplined to process. They asked for payment in full. The guy says, I don't have it. I'm like, okay. Her name was Sarah. I said, all right, Sarah, come on, Sarah. She says, no worries, Mr. So-and-so. How short are you? Well, I could do 4, but could you work with me for the other 1,000 until I get paid again? That was a positive, disciplined approach to asking for money. You are not the bank interest-free loan of your community, nor is any other business in town. So that is a big, big opportunity that I see staff really struggle with. So keep an ear out for that one. The answer should be, how short are you? And then negotiate from there, right? Let's go here. A few more things. Again, just helping with staff. If again, giving them some visuals. Hey, if I saw this in a few patient rooms when I had some family members in the hospital, communicate your pain. What if you did this with your face-to-face or your phone call interaction? What would your result be? So be thinking about that. You have the ability to leave a lasting impression with that patient. Very, very important. Next one, please. A couple more items of documentation. There's some more scripting here for you. Hey, I can sense you're frustrated. Others have experienced the same way. Again, some scripting for your staff to be building rapport. So use those if you will, if those make sense and they meet your methodology. Next one, Jill, please, if you would. setting the stage. Again, some more scripting. I'm happy to work with you. Please allow me that opportunity. I can definitely get those issues right. I am not, concerned, or I'm not confused. I'm not, gee, I don't know. If I would have walked up to that person using that language at the car rental place, I might have escalated. I went, oh boy, I'm in trouble. But thankfully, she came right out of the gate. Mr. Cook, I got you. Okay. Your staff needs to have that skill set. So some of these might help diffuse some of that. Always using that action item like we talked about. Hospitals that promote these positive impressions got a 59% in their patient satisfaction score increase. That's huge, right? Sometimes we track those things. We've got to be saying the right things. And again, those got to resonate with me, the patient, when I am, honestly, not at my best. I'm a nice guy, but if I'm hurting, I'm there, I cut my finger, whatever, right? Your team has to deal with all those issues. So it's really important that they're saying the right thing with the right tone and voice inflection. Next one. Putting it all together, right? I see you're frustrated. Here's that feel, felt, found, just said differently. I understand. Please know I'm here to help. We can work through this and what I can do. And you're hitting it with that I can do. And then, Marriott quote, doing whatever it takes to ensure that our guests return. We hope they don't, right? We want them to be healthy. But if they have a choice, like I do, certainly in West Michigan, do I turn left to go to this facility? Do I turn right to go to that one? I was down in Indiana the other day, and it was like every fifth billboard was all the health systems fighting for market share. You guys seen the ones where they have the clock, the timer, the number of minutes to wait in ER or in ED? It's crazy. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it going, well, if I wreck right now, I could be in 5 minutes. I mean, it's nuts, right? So there's a lot of competition. Next one, please. And then evaluate yourself. Did I achieve my objective? And again, don't take yourself so seriously. If you're starting from scratch, you're going to fail. I had a group the other day. The gal was very gracious with her feedback in front of the group and just said, hey, I want to share with you. I had my lunch 3 or 4 times yesterday. And then, last week I went 10 for 10 though. And I'm like, I appreciate you sharing that. It's going to happen. You're dealing with the public and you're asking them to do something they don't want to do. So just, be realistic. Did the patient though feel better about the experience, which your team absolutely has a hand in? And then, hey, what could I have done differently? We all need to be growing, right? You need to ask your coworker for help, or just say, hey, I'm going to make myself vulnerable here. I'm going to be a little transparent. I don't know what happened there. Can you listen to my next interaction? Or, hey, boss, I'm going to put myself out there. It's not working great for me. What am I doing wrong? I had a gentleman that was saying all the right things, but his tone, and unfortunately, it was just his voice. He wasn't being condescending at all. It's just he had that voice on the phone where it was picked up as such, and he had to overcome that. And hey, what can I learn to share with the rest of the group? Because again, where our job is to all elevate each other, right? How are we doing? Here's those books I was sharing with you. Next slide, please. These are just some training documents that we had put together that actually a client of mine put together and say, oh, we don't mind, but our marketing team had some spare time and we took your content and we made these books. I'm like, these are awesome. I said, I don't mind at all. I said, I just want the file so that I can change the color and we can share these with other people that have been gracious with us and sharing what works for them. And, so we can help one another. So I do have these available if they're an interest. You can see they're just some training guides. We came up with like the top 10, top 15 excuses or stalls and objective that a patient should have. And we just focus on what those are. And I want our new staff and old to be very comfortable with these, again, so that when they're coming, right? I don't have the money. I didn't bring my wallet. Okay. Those are not a surprise to any of us. We should be equipped with something in our toolbox to say, hey, Mr. Cook, no problem. Let me share it. Feel, felt, found. And if it's a brand new employee and it doesn't come that easy, they can flip to this on the next one and say, okay, the next person that brings that one in, I'm going to have a professional response because I work hard. Our providers are awesome. There's nothing more important than health, and we deserve to get paid. And that's what I wanted to see. Next one, please. So, all right, we'll leave you with this. We got a couple minutes for question and answer. If you could bop through these, Jill. Relax. Again, I talked about it. It's not a life or death. One of my mentors in healthcare said, hey, come on. When we would get a little heated because we were all very competitive, he's like, hey, come on, stress kills, no one dies in our department. There were a few times I think he wanted to kill somebody, but We got through it. Communication, it's wonderful when it's done properly. Keep your focus on a patient by patient, right? Commit to that excellence. Remember to control that tone, voice inflection, and volume. Again, might be a blind spot for some people, some of your staff. They may do a couple right, but again, when you're thinking about that pie chart of nonverbal, verbal tone, and if someone escalated, really try to figure out what caused that. And it could be different every time. And then your folks that are 100% on the phone, they got to be sitting up. They got to be smiling when they're on their phone. I promise you it comes through. The smile factor, keep it light. These are not my baby pictures. I was not that cute. There's a couple more, Jill, you got to blow through them. That one is not my baby picture. But keep light, right? Have some fun with it. Set realistic goals and expectations. No one has ever made 100% of the shots they've taken. I'm not a huge baseball fan, but hey, listen, if you batted 300, 3 out of 10, you're a Hall of Famer, right? We are asking staff to swing the bat 100% of the time. Ask me for that payment. Hey, Mr. Script, looks like you've got a $20 copay here on your insurance card. I'd happily take that for you right now. We accept cash, check, or travel. Which would you prefer? Right? Swing the bat 100% of the time. Realistic expectation on the success of that, working up to 35, 45% on average. Some days are going to be better. Some days are going to be less. Excellent. Please be willing to fail. Again, it's a numbers game, right? We talked about that. And last one, I think, keep it in perspective, set those goals, develop your plan, work your plan while having some fun along the way. I shared with you a few things that some of our staff members did, some coworkers did to help keep things light, the traveling cat, things of that nature. It's a tough job, right? And there's a lot going on. And so, my way of handling stress sometimes is through humor, good or bad. Sometimes it's not always the best tool, but it works for me. And we've had a lot of fun with staff, again, trying to keep it a little bit lighthearted, knowing it's such a tough job when you're asking literally hundreds of people a month possibly to do something they don't want to do. But there's, again, nothing more important than your health. My assumption is you got some of the best providers in the country. You did a great job. You work hard and you deserve to get paid. And I want to see your success. I don't want to read in the paper of another, God forbid, Michigan hospital or facility closing. It's happening. If you read Becker's or you see this stuff, it's tough. And so as we as consumers are saddled with more and more of that bill, we've got to do a better job in healthcare of engaging the patient. So, at the hour.